Your visceral fat isn't stuck because you're eating too much. It's stuck because your body thinks you're dying. Right now, at this very moment, a biological alarm is screaming inside your abdomen. It's not a calorie problem. It's not a discipline problem. It's a survival override. And the architect of that override is a single hormone called cortisol. Most people treat belly fat like a cosmetic inconvenience. They count calories, cut carbs, run for hours on a treadmill, and watch the scale drop, everywhere except the midsection. The arms get thinner, the face gets gaunt, but the belly, it stays hard, distended, untouchable. That's not a coincidence. That's cortisol doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting you from a famine that never comes. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you the one biological signal that unlocks visceral fat and the mistake 90% of people make that keeps cortisol elevated even while they sleep. But first, you need to understand why your body is holding on so tightly. There are two types of fat on your body, and only one of them is trying to kill you. The first is subcutaneous fat. That's the soft, pinchable layer under your skin. It's passive. It sits there. It stores energy. It doesn't interfere with your metabolism. You can have subcutaneous fat and still be metabolically healthy. But deep beneath the surface, wrapped around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines, infiltrating the spaces between your organs, lies visceral fat. Visceral fat is biologically active. It is not a storage unit. It is an endocrine organ. It pumps inflammatory molecules called cytokines into your bloodstream 24 hours a day. It disrupts insulin signaling at the cellular level. It raises your blood pressure by constricting blood vessels. It clogs your arteries with oxidized lipids, and it hijacks your hormonal axis, creating a cascade of metabolic dysfunction. People with high levels of visceral fat are at dramatically higher risk for type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke, certain cancers, and dementia. This isn't about vanity. This is about survival. But here's the part that changes everything. Visceral fat doesn't accumulate because you ate too many calories. It accumulates because your nervous system perceives a threat. Your body is responding to what it believes is an emergency. And the hormone that orchestrates that emergency response, that builds visceral fat brick by brick around your organs, is cortisol. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but that label is too simple. Cortisol is a survival coordinator. For 200,000 years, it kept humans alive through famine, predation, and war. When danger appeared, a lion on the savannah, a rival tribe, a winter with no food, your brain activated a system called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands working in sequence. This system did three things instantly. First, it flooded your bloodstream with glucose to fuel a fight-or-flight response. Your muscles needed immediate energy to run or fight. Second, it shut down digestion, reproduction, immune function, and muscle repair, anything that wasn't immediately necessary for survival. Why waste energy digesting food when you might not survive the next 10 minutes? And third, it placed a high concentration of glucocorticoid receptors, essentially cortisol magnets, around your internal organs, so that when the danger passed, your body could rapidly refuel the liver and prepare for the next threat. These receptors act like docking stations, pulling fat from the bloodstream and locking it around your vital organs. Visceral fat was your ancestors' insurance policy. It was a survival backpack. If you survived the tiger attack or the harsh winter, your body prioritized storing energy right where your vital organs could access it instantly. But your biology hasn't updated its software in 10,000 years, and today the threats have changed completely. There are no tigers anymore. Instead, there are deadlines that never end, traffic jams that spike your heart rate, blue light from screens at midnight that tells your brain the sun is still up, financial pressure that gnaws at you while you're trying to sleep, social anxiety amplified by algorithms designed to keep you scrolling, notifications that demand immediate responses, emails that arrive at all hours, a world that never stops, never rests, never gives you permission to feel safe. The stress is no longer acute, a 10-minute chase from a predator followed by hours of rest. It's chronic, a low-grade hum of anxiety that runs 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And here's where the trap closes.
Because you're constantly stressed, your cortisol levels never drop to baseline. Your body remains in a perpetual state of emergency. It constantly signals your liver to release glucose for a physical fight that never happens. When you don't burn that glucose off with physical movement, your pancreas must release insulin to clear the sugar from your blood. And insulin is a storage hormone. In the presence of high cortisol and high insulin simultaneously, your body has no choice but to take that energy and lock it into visceral fat cells. You are caught in a vicious cycle. You are trapped in a biological loop. Your body is frantically preparing for a famine that never comes, while you continue to feed it 3 meals a day. But it gets worse, much worse. Chronic stress leads to a phenomenon called the pregnenolone steal. Cortisol is so vital for survival that your body will prioritize its production over everything else. It uses a precursor hormone called pregnenolone to make cortisol. But pregnenolone is also the raw material for your sex hormones, testosterone in men, estrogen in women. When stress is chronically high, your body literally steals pregnenolone away from sex hormone production to make more cortisol. It's a survival triage. Your body is saying, we don't have time to reproduce, we need to survive today. And this is why chronic stress leads to low libido, erectile dysfunction, irregular menstrual cycles, fatigue, brain fog, depression, and accelerated muscle loss. Your body is sacrificing long-term health for short-term survival. And this is why we see the skinny fat phenotype, people with thin arms and legs but a hard, distended belly. High cortisol is literally catabolizing, breaking down muscle tissue from the limbs and converting it into glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. That glucose is then redeposited as fat around the organs because the cortisol receptors in the abdomen are pulling it in. You're not just gaining weight, you're structurally rearranging your body composition based on a survival blueprint designed for the Stone Age. Your body is cannibalizing itself. And there's another layer to this trap that explains why willpower always fails. When you're stressed, your body releases a neuropeptide called neuropeptide Y. This molecule is specifically designed to make you crave carbohydrates. It's ancient biology. Neuropeptide Y tells your brain that energy expenditure is high due to stress, and the fastest way to replenish it is through dense, easy-to-digest calories, sugar, bread, pasta. It's not a lack of willpower that makes you reach for comfort food after a stressful day. It's a chemical signal as strong as the drive to breathe. You are fighting your own neurobiology. But here's the question no one is asking. If cortisol is the problem, why do most fat loss strategies raise cortisol even higher?
Most people try to burn visceral fat by doing more cardio and eating less food. That's the worst possible combination. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Here's why. Extreme calorie restriction is a stressor. Your body doesn't understand the difference between a voluntary diet and a real famine. It perceives both as a threat to survival. In response, it raises cortisol to protect your remaining energy stores. You lose muscle because muscle is metabolically expensive and your body wants to get rid of it. Your metabolic rate drops because your body is trying to conserve energy. And the visceral fat? It stays locked in place because that's your emergency reserve. Chronic cardio, running for hours at a steady pace, especially in a fasted state, mimics the stress of a long hunt or an escape from danger. It spikes cortisol even further and signals your body to hold on to fat even tighter. Studies show that marathon runners often have elevated visceral fat despite running hundreds of miles per month. You cannot force visceral fat off by adding more stress to an already stressed system. That's the mistake 99% of people make. They try to beat their body into submission. The solution is not deprivation. The solution is signaling safety. You must convince your autonomic nervous system that the war is over, that the famine isn't coming, that resources are abundant, that it's safe to let go of the emergency reserves and return to a state of metabolic flexibility. And to do that, you need to understand the one biological switch that controls whether cortisol stays high or drops to baseline. That switch is your perception of threat, and it's controlled by 5 specific inputs your nervous system monitors every single day. I'm about to walk you through all 5, but there's one input that almost everyone gets wrong, and it happens in the first 60 minutes after you wake up.
I'll explain that at the end, because if you fix that one thing, everything else becomes easier. The most effective tool for lowering cortisol while burning fat is not high-intensity interval training. It's low-intensity, steady-state movement, specifically walking. Walking uncouples the stress response. It allows your body to burn fat for fuel without triggering the fight-or-flight alarm. Anthropologists suggest that walking was the baseline state of human existence. Our ancestors walked 10 to 15 miles per day just to survive. When you walk, especially outdoors, the passing of visual landscapes, called optic flow, actually calms the amygdala, your brain's fear center. It communicates to your brain that you are moving forward, you are not trapped, and you are safe. Walking also activates fat oxidation pathways without spiking cortisol. Unlike sprinting or long-distance running, walking keeps your heart rate in zone 2, where your body preferentially burns fat for fuel instead of glucose. But walking alone won't protect your muscle, and muscle is your metabolic armor. That's where heavy resistance training comes in. Lifting heavy weights sends a potent anabolic signal that directly counters the muscle-wasting catabolic effects of cortisol. It increases testosterone and growth hormone, both direct antagonists to visceral fat storage. By building muscle, you also increase your insulin receptor sensitivity, giving glucose somewhere productive to go, instead of being stored as visceral fat. Every pound of muscle you add is like installing a new glucose disposal unit in your body. The protocol is simple: 30 to 45 minutes of walking per day, ideally in the morning sunlight, plus 3 sessions per week of heavy compound lifts: squats, deadlifts, bench presses, overhead presses, rows. You're not doing high-rep bodybuilding circuits. You're lifting heavy for low reps to send a survival signal that muscle is essential. No marathon cardio, no chronic exercise. Cortisol follows a natural circadian rhythm. It should be highest in the morning to wake you up and give you energy, and lowest in the evening to allow deep sleep and tissue repair. Modern lifestyles completely invert this natural rhythm. A high-protein breakfast, 30 to 50 grams of protein within the first hour of waking, supports dopamine production and thyroid function. It sets a metabolic pace for the day without spiking insulin. Protein also signals abundance to your body, telling it that resources are plentiful and there's no need to hoard energy. Conversely, shifting complex carbohydrates to your evening meal can be a strategic tool. Carbohydrates trigger the release of serotonin, which is a precursor to melatonin, your sleep hormone. Eating carbs at dinner blunts the evening cortisol spike and allows your body to shift from sympathetic fight-or-flight mode to parasympathetic rest and digest mode during sleep. This is when fat burning and cellular repair actually happen. The protocol is protein-dominant breakfast, balanced lunch with protein, healthy fats, and vegetables, carbohydrates at dinner, rice, potatoes, or squash. No late-night caffeine, which keeps cortisol elevated and disrupts your circadian rhythm. One night of sleep deprivation can reduce your insulin sensitivity by up to 40%. If you're sleeping less than 7 hours per night, your body perceives this as a stressor equivalent to a physical injury. It raises baseline cortisol the next day to keep you alert and awake, which immediately triggers visceral fat storage. Sleep deprivation also increases ghrelin, your hunger hormone, and decreases leptin, your satiety hormone. This is why you crave junk food after a bad night of sleep. You're not weak, you're hormonally hijacked. Prioritizing sleep hygiene, cool rooms, complete darkness, and a consistent sleep-wake schedule is not passive rest, it's active metabolic strategy. It's when your body repairs, regenerates, and resets your hormonal baseline.
The protocol: 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Room temperature at 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Blackout curtains or an eye mask. No screens 1 hour before bed. A consistent bedtime, even on weekends. A body under chronic stress burns through specific minerals at an accelerated rate. Magnesium, often called the relaxation mineral, is the first to be depleted. Magnesium is a cofactor in over 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including those that regulate cortisol. A deficiency amplifies the stress response, creating a hair trigger sensitivity where even small stressors feel overwhelming. Supplementing with magnesium glycinate, the most bioavailable form, along with adaptogens like ashwagandha or rhodiola, has been shown in clinical studies to lower serum cortisol levels substantially. Ashwagandha, in particular, has been shown to reduce cortisol by up to 30% in chronically stressed individuals. The protocol: 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate before bed to support sleep and muscle relaxation. 300 to 600 milligrams of ashwagandha extract daily, preferably in the evening. Rhodiola can be taken in the morning if you need energy support without stimulants. Visceral fat is physical, but its root is often perception. The brain does not distinguish between a physical threat and a psychological worry. Whether you're being chased by a predator or worrying about your mortgage, your brain activates the same stress pathways. If you perceive your life as a series of emergencies, your biochemistry will reflect that perception. Deep diaphragmatic breathing, breathing deeply into your belly rather than shallowly into your chest, stimulates the vagus nerve, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the rest and digest state, the opposite of fight or flight. This is the only state in which your body feels safe enough to release its emergency reserves and burn visceral fat. The protocol: 5 minutes of box breathing twice per day. 4-second inhale through your nose, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale through your mouth, 4-second hold. Repeat for 5 minutes. Do this once in the morning and once before bed. It resets your nervous system and lowers baseline cortisol. But here's the piece almost no one talks about, and it's the reason your cortisol stays elevated all day long, even when you're doing everything else right. Cortisol naturally peaks 30 to 45 minutes after you wake up. This is called the cortisol awakening response, and it's completely healthy. It's what gets you out of bed and gives you energy to start your day. But if you spike cortisol again within that window by checking your phone, scrolling social media, reading stressful emails, watching the news, or drinking coffee on an empty stomach, you create a double spike that keeps your baseline cortisol elevated for the entire day. Most people reach for their phone within 5 minutes of waking. They're immediately bombarded with notifications, problems, demands, and threats, both real and perceived. That's the mistake. Your nervous system interprets that information as danger, and it raises cortisol even higher. Your first 60 minutes set your nervous system's tone for the entire day. If you start in a state of reactivity, urgency, and threat, your body will interpret the entire day as dangerous, and it will hold on to visceral fat as a survival mechanism. The fix is simple, but requires discipline. Delay all screens and caffeine for at least 60 minutes after waking. Instead, expose your eyes to natural sunlight within the first 10 minutes of waking, even through a window on cloudy days. This anchors your circadian rhythm by signaling to your brain that it's daytime, which helps cortisol drop naturally in the evening. Drink a large glass of water to rehydrate. Move gently, stretch, walk, breathe, and eat a protein-rich breakfast to signal abundance. This sequence protects your cortisol awakening response and prevents the double spike that sabotages everything else you're doing right. When you protect that first hour, cortisol drops naturally throughout the day. Your body stops perceiving constant threat, your nervous system recalibrates, and the visceral fat, the emergency reserves your body has been guarding so fiercely for years, finally begins to release. Burning visceral fat is not a battle of willpower. It's a negotiation with your biology. You are fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming that wants to keep you alive at all costs. Your visceral fat protected your ancestors from starvation, from famine, from death. But to thrive in the modern world, you must signal to your body that the famine is not coming, that you are safe, that resources are abundant, that it can finally let go. You do that by optimizing your sleep, redefining your exercise to lower rather than raise cortisol, aligning your nutrition with your natural circadian rhythm, supporting your body with the minerals it needs to regulate stress,
calming your nervous system through breath work, and, most critically, protecting your first waking hour from the cortisol double spike that keeps you in a state of perpetual emergency. When you do this consistently, you don't just lose weight, you don't just flatten your belly, you reset your entire hormonal baseline. You turn off the biological alarm that has been screaming for years. You restore metabolic flexibility. You reclaim your energy, your clarity, your strength. And when the alarm finally goes silent, when your body finally believes that you are safe, the fortress of visceral fat begins to crumble.